Well, 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 I see somebody watched Arrival. This is a review of Species 10C, the 12th and penultimate episode of Star Trek Discovery's 4th season. If you're watching this before you've seen the episode, don't worry, this review is spoiler free. So, remember my little rant in the last review about the show's shortcomings when it comes to the pacing of the season long story arc? Just take those criticisms, scale them down, and apply them to a single episode because that's pretty much exactly how I felt about this episode. As is almost always the case, there is good stuff here. The episode does an excellent job of both revealing Species 10C while also keeping them remote and mysterious. There's a lot of problem solving going on. There's tension between what Captain Burnham and the gang on Discovery are doing and what Tarka is up to over on Book's ship. In between all of that are some nice character moments between Burnham and Saru and Culber and Zora, the incredible living computer, and there's only a very mild random backstory info dump from a background character this time, which I can't decide if I'm happy about or disappointed. I know the random backstory info dumps are bad writing, but I've grown so fond of them. The problem with the episode is that while these individual scenes or moments are good, they only manage to progress the story a teensy tiny little bit. And making that small amount of progress takes forever. The main story is good. At least in theory, the heroes put their heads together to figure out how to communicate with a species that seems truly intimidatingly alien. It feels like it could have been a plot from an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. Remember the episode where they briefly figure out how to communicate with the crystalline entity using a graviton pulse? This episode feels like that. Not the same thing, but the same sort of thing. Again, for the fourth or fifth time this season, Discovery is evoking a previous Star Trek series, and it works for me. But the pacing of this episode is absolutely glacial. When you drop a poorly paced episode near the end of what has turned out to be, especially in this second half, a poorly paced season, it only serves to amplify the problems of both that episode and the season as a whole. And it's frustrating because, as I said last week, I like this show. I feel like I have to keep saying that because every time I give a mixed review to an episode, I have people on one side saying, "Oh no, I love Discovery. I'm sorry you don't like it." And another side saying, "It's about time you admitted that this show fucking sucks." I do like it. It doesn't suck. It's the best looking, best directed Star Trek show ever. I like the characters, the ones that they've taken the time to develop, that is. I like the actors. The ideas presented in a lot of these stories are incredibly creative. I won't spoil exactly what it is, but the concept the writers came up with for how Species 10C communicates is extremely imaginative. The only thing holding the show back is the pacing. Too often, the story feels like it's crawling when it needs to be jogging, and then when we have one episode left, it suddenly breaks into a frantic sprint for the finish line. Besides pacing, structure is also a problem with this episode. The way the story of this episode is put together puzzles me. It feels like the writers are tripping over their own feet. There's a scene relatively late in the episode between Burnham and Saru that, taken out of context and judged as a piece unto itself, is lovely. It's a really wonderful scene, funny and charming and human. But it occurs at a crucial point in the efforts to break through to Species 10C and brings that story, which is already proceeding extremely slowly, to a halt. That scene is to this episode as last week's episode is to this season. Excellent on its own, but placed in the larger story at a very frustrating position. There's also the ending to this episode, which is a cliffhanger meant to yank us into the finale, but which involves the main characters finding out information we already know and have known for a long time, which kind of blunts the impact. It's an underwhelming payoff. Kind of like how the winner of American Ninja Warrior only wins $100,000. I mean, it's a lot of money, but for all that, you can win $10,000 on an episode of Chopped, and you don't even have to make it up the mega wall. You just have to make a dish incorporating chicken feet, Rocky Mountain oysters, stinging nettles, and durian that won't make Marcus Samuelsson throw up all over his flamboyant yet stylish custom suit. What could be simpler? Anyway, next week's season finale can still rally and salvage some of this, and I hope it does, but I feel like I've seen this play before, you know? The back half of the season drags and drags and drags, and then suddenly rushes forward in the last episode. After a promising beginning and a couple of very, very good episodes, this has become my least favorite season of this show since the first, when the pacing was even worse. Remember when they spent 4 straight episodes fucking around in the mirror universe for no reason? Yeah, at least this season managed to clear that bar. I'm still curious to see how this all ends up, but I'm less curious now than I was before this episode, because I feel like I kind of know, broadly speaking, how it's going to go. We'll see. They could still surprise me. I hope they do. Or, failing that, at least manage to wrap everything up in a satisfying way. Those are my thoughts about this episode. Let me know what you thought, but remember, my review is spoiler-free, so if you're going to include spoilers in your comments, please include a spoiler warning so that folks who haven't seen the episode yet can avoid spoilers if they want. If you want to support my channel, go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron, or click the join button to become a member. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week for a review of the season finale.